Access to Democracy is made possible thanks to the following organizations. Recalibra Health, a new nationwide telehealth platform designed to provide safe and effective health and wellness products at affordable prices. Available products include compound GLP-1 for weight loss, as well as multiple medications for men's and women's health and hair loss, all administered under the direct supervision of expert physicians, nurse practitioners, and physician assistants. Visit recalibrahealth.com for more information. Sheridan and Dulas, PA, a family and criminal defense law firm, has been serving clients in Dakota County and throughout Minnesota for over 40 years. Ranked a Tier 1 Best Law Firm by U.S. News & World Report every year since 2009. Sheridan and Dulas are here to help you in your most difficult life circumstances. Learn more at ssdpa.com. Established in 2007 and based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, 45th Parallel Distillery was among the first 50 micro distilleries in the United States. All aspects of production occur at their facility. If you're interested in learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check their website and plan a visit to tour their facility and taste their spirits. 45thParallelDistillery.com. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has been proudly serving its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
Welcome to Access to Democracy. I'm Alan Miller, visiting back here with what used to be my home, and we have a very interesting guest today, Laura Hedlund, who is, in effect, the voice of AM950, progressive radio. And Laura?
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ellen. And I'm a voice, which is what democracy is, right? Democracy is our voice. It's not the voice. Now,
well, you
Victor
are the
Orban,
voice today.
Yeah, well, the voice. I am the voice on your show today.
Yeah.
I will say 100%. But I think when it comes to democracy, which we've both been so passionate about, there's almost this domination. I'm really happy with how the elections went in Hungary, because you have people who believe that democracy is the one and only voice, nickname him Mordor or something.
This is such an important year for us.
It's so critical, and it's how do we walk up to our power? So
yeah. Now you graduated from the U of Minnesota journalism school. Mm-hmm. Take us a little bit through your life since then.
Yeah, so I have actually a pretty interesting background. I did graduate from the U in journalism. I was an intern at CCO Television. I worked in Mason City, Iowa for several years. And then I switched, I worked politics. I was the deputy press secretary on Paul Wellstone's 1990 campaign. I was the press secretary on David Mingy's 1992 campaign. Both of those won. I was a deep volunteer here in Dakota County when we passed a tax increase to protect land, and we see the fruition of that. I also helped pass what was called then Health Right. It was the first state-run healthcare program in the country, Health Right, and that evolved into Minnesota Care. And I also was hired, believe it or not, by the Republicans and the Democrats when they wanted to work together to promote caucus attendance. So I did that.
You have to think back a ways too.
I know, and it was but there was this sense of working together. But more important than that work history, I think, is my personal story. So I'm a truck driver's daughter. And my dad was truck driver of the year. He went 3 million miles without an accident, had 6 kids.
A union man?
A union man. Not only was he a union man, but when we grew up, we had 2 vacations every year. We got the summer vacation and the winter vacation. We had a 4-bedroom house. We had health care. We had dental care. He had a pension. And the reason I experienced that life was because of the 1939 truck driver strike. Because people got together and they said, this isn't working for families. What do we do that's better? And they stood up for each other. And I think this is the parallel that we're in right now. There are a lot of people, I mean, they don't even think you can buy a house anymore, and there's just so much churn. And how do we lift up a world that works for families?
Well, corporations are buying up media outlets. We see it in television, we see it in radio, in particular in radio, where outfits like Sinclair can have dozens of stations. You made a choice some time back to go to AM950, the progressive voice of Minnesota radio. Tell us about that.
Again, I'm going to go back to I'm a truck driver's daughter. And when you talk about media, and I actually did a college paper on this in the 1980s. In the 1980s, I did a college paper about media consolidation, and it has gotten a lot worse. And it's not, a lot of people buy media not for a business model, but they buy media because they want to control the system. Again, I can go back to what happened to Hungary and Viktor Orban. They want to dominate the system. They don't like democracy. They like and so they want to control people based on the information. So not only
have a president right here who's trying to do that.
Or trying, yeah, yeah. I mean, and people. So there's so much to say on this topic, right? Because not only did this, and I want to use the words that the forces of domination. I'm going to get a little fancy. I like Walter Wink. He's a theologian who wrote the book The Powers That Be. So it's the forces that want to dominate. Yes, they bought the media. Yes, they bought in all the radio stations. Yes, they bought all the TV stations. Yes, when grassroots people build up something like Twitter, then they go and buy it. But they go and buy it, and they go buy in order to control. And so are we going to just say, well, I guess that's the system? I mean, that's not what I was raised with. You fight for the common good.
So tell us about the history of AM 950.
Yeah, AM 950 is a beautiful little station, and where we are right now is in such a cool spot. AM 950 is producing over 26 local shows every week.
That's wonderful.
26 local shows, and each show has its own ecosystem. And we can now, we're on an old-fashioned 80 AM signal, and I remember someone once wrote an editorial about AM. Isn't that, like 8-track tapes and out of style? Yeah. But AM radio was actually the very first social media. So
it's also coming back.
Oh, it's coming back.
It's becoming much more popular.
It is, and it's a place where people can call in, and it's a public place where we all can share ideas. It's not about the one ring to rule them all. It's not about one viewpoint that we're trying to get out there because we want more power and more domination. But it's about how do we lift up this world that we know.
But it's expensive to run a radio station.
Very expensive.
So how come in this vast group of radio stations, many right-wing, most right-wing, many religious, etc., except for the few network stations, how does AM 950 fit into that picture, and how did it start?
Let's take the easy question: is how did it start? So, former Congressman Bill Luther and Janet Robert, they actually totally stumbled on this. They accidentally walked into a meeting, and it was after the Wellstone death, and they were really upset about how that campaign was at. But they actually walked into a meeting that they weren't intending to, and they walked out of that learning again about the media, being very knowledgeable, and then putting their money on the line and bought this little station, this AM station. And so Janet...
And money on the line. You're talking about a lot of money.
Yeah, and I'm a good Minnesotan. I'm a Minnesota woman. I don't ask people how much they spend on things. But yeah, they bought it, and it was a real challenge. I mean, it was the early years, and one of our first talk show hosts was Al Franken, and this was before he ran for U.S. Senate. But there was a lot of challenges with trying to get progressive talk off the air and off the ground. And the economics, the economics of conservative talk is that billionaires fund it, and they fund it because they fund it.
Even whether they're not interested in it or not, they just want to get the right-wing voice out there. And one of the different things about back in the days when I was calling in, before AM 950 really became into prominence, you call into a right-wing station and they vet you, and you have to fit in a certain category before they let you on air. to speak your voice. So the result is that you only get basically one viewpoint. AM950 is completely different because you call in, you wait your turn, you get on the air, and you speak to your host. Speak to the hosts that we have on AM950.
Yeah, it's a really fun. Again, we're up to 26 different shows. So we have Stephanie Miller, and she's a comedian out of California. That's national. We have Tom Hartman, who is a wonderful person. He's an author of 30-some books. I just love Tom. And we talk about needing deep, factual information that's presented with integrity and truth and a real heart. And that's Tom Hartman. I absolutely think Tom Hartman is brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and even more than brilliant, very grounded and very out for the public good. You know, we all do better when we all do better, as Paul Wellstone said.
So.
Yeah. And then we go to our local shows. So from 2 to 3, you have a show called The Gaily Show, which is really a fun show. The Gaily Show. It's one of the few LGBT or daily shows on radio. I think it might be the only one in the country. That's a great show. It's on from 2 to 3.
Certainly the only one in Minnesota.
And then we have from 3 to 5, and you had this time slot a little bit, you did a little bit. We have our Matt McNeil, who's been with us for 15 years. And Matt has got a wonderful show. Matt talks about his children. He talks about his experience, and he's very knowledgeable. And people can call in, and so that's Matt McNeil. Then after Matt, we go with Native Roots Radio. And Native Roots Radio started on AM 950 as a weekend show, and now it expanded. It's hosted by Robert Pilot. He's a member of the Ho-Chunk tribe. His wife, Wendy Pilot, who is a longtime animal activist, also was in that show sometimes. And one of the things that I believe, and I think my ancestors believe, is that the plants are our relatives. I mean, we need a different economic system. If we have a world that doesn't work for the planet, it doesn't work for us. We need a world that works for the planet. We need to find a way of honoring water and honoring soil and living in healthy, vital ways.
But now the first days were difficult with setting up the station. Before Stephanie Miller came on, we had Wendy Wild.
Wendy Wild, yeah, that was great.
And then all of a sudden, Wendy Wild was gone, very suddenly. So somebody called Alan Miller, stepped in for a few weeks until they worked that out.
And we appreciated you stepping in.
And then there was, what's his name, Coleman.
Oh, Coleman and Nick Coleman. And I'm actually even hearing Nick Coleman. I remember he did some really powerful radio. He really did.
And then all of a sudden, Nick Coleman was gone, very suddenly. And so they looked around desperately. They couldn't find anybody, so they went to Alan Miller again. And he was Nick Coleman for a few weeks. And since then, and I haven't been doing it lately, health reasons wise, I've sat in for certainly just about everybody on the show, on the station. In particular, the afternoon show, 3 to 5. He does a wonderful job.
Yeah, that's Matt McNeil. So Matt McNeil did step into that 9 a.m. time slot, and for whatever reason, that after it's been 22 years that we've been here. So then Matt has been with the station now for over 15 years. So he did that morning slot, and then it got into the afternoon drive.
I shudder when I think it's 22 years.
Yeah.
Because I was there in the beginning, and although Access to Democracy is now in its 27th year. So.
You got us beat. And I know one thing, you had some important guests come in, and the doors were all locked. And fortunately, I was there and let you in. So I think that happened in that first year or two, but yeah, I mean, it's been fun. And now it is great that we're up to 25, 26 shows. We have a housing justice show. I've done a show called Food Freedom Radio now since 2012. And we have a wonderful block of LGBTQ plus programming. We have Ellie Krug with the Illegal Trans Woman. We have Philip Anthony with the Upright Downright Show. We have Twin Cities Pride Amplified. So it's a wonderful place. It's a community place, which is what democracy is.
What does Laura do for the show?
What do I do for Food Freedom Radio?
Yeah.
I
What
do
do you do for
everything.
AM950?
What do I do for AM950? Okay, so I was hired as one of the very first salespeople at AM950, and in a couple years after I worked there was a personal issue that happened in my family, and there were some other things going on, and then Janet and I talked, and they kind of changed my role to something called new business development. So one of the things I
It
am here.
wasn't easy in the beginning.
No.
Getting sponsors.
You know
on
what?
that
Driving, I have my dad's, my dad has driven 3 million miles where he did that.
Yeah.
So driving 3 million miles is not easy. Pouring concrete is not easy. You know, there's not having enough money to feed your kids is not easy. So, and I think I've never shuck away from not easy because like my dad's mother raised 4 kids in the Great Depression. She had 4 kids and no income. So, I mean, I come from a long list of people who know that not easy doesn't mean bad.
No, for sure. And running a progressive radio station in Minnesota in the beginning certainly was not easy.
No, it wasn't. I mean, it was a lot of challenges.
And as you say, you know, it's 22 years. I didn't realize it was 22 years because I go back to the beginning, and it's really, it certainly makes you stop and think and recognize that things certainly are different. So we're in a time today where this is the only really progressive voice in Minnesota in radio.
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about the challenges that we face.
So we're in a crisis of not knowing what's true and what's not true. And we're in a crisis where a few people dominate and own almost everything. And one of the things I wanted to make the connection here, and this is a hard thing to kind of grasp, but not only is it that media is in a bad light right now, but our healthcare systems are in a bad light. The education systems, all of our systems right now are really challenged. And the business system is challenged. So
Well,
media.
Under this administration,
yes.
we don't have money for these things.
Right.
Because we have money for wars, we have money for anything that can take away a benefit for the average person.
And this is why media is so important, because I don't. So what is the truth of happening right now, right? What is the truth? Hundreds of billions of dollars are being spent to bomb people,
and kill people.
And destroy homes. Millions of people, homes have been destroyed with our tax dollars. At the same time that we are cutting SNAP benefits, which were never too generous anyhow. And then we have a system where everyone's kind of like, it's his fault, and they're able to like get everyone mad at each other.
How about healthcare?
And healthcare. I mean, there's just so many problems right now. But again, how do we imagine something better? And I've got an idea for that.
Well,
yeah.
We'll certainly get to that. But,
Okay.
Imagining to get things better requires people to vote. And you can see the way the president's popularity ratings have dropped and dropped and dropped. And why? Because people are paying more than $4 for gas. Why? Because he started a war with no concept of what he was doing. Why? Because they fired all the experienced people in the military who were running things. Why? Because you bring in somebody like Elon Musk, who's as crazy as the president, and I really mean crazy, and gut the government and put all the experienced people out. Why? Because you have a Kash Patel who is fit maybe to, I don't know if anything that he's fit for. And we've already seen some of the people that were so embarrassing to this administration get canned. But then locally, we have people like Pete Stauber. He's a representative. And what does he do? Introduces a bill so that we can do mining up near the boundary waters. One of the most pristine and important environmental areas in the world, not just in Minnesota, but in the world. And a local representative, obviously working with the mining interests, introduces a bill. I can't fathom it.
Well, and it is really hard to take it all in, and especially the mining issues, and it gets to our relationships with the earth and with each other, and so the question is, what do we do about it, right? I mean, our
That's it.
ancestors, that's the question. What do we do about it? And so, I see if this makes any sense. But did you ever watch the film "It's a Wonderful World"? That old classic, black and white. It's a
Yes.
Wonderful World, and then on one hand you've got George Bailey with the savings and loan, and he's helping Mr. Martin buy his own house, and there's this beautiful scene. It's like the guy goes, "Mr. Martin, you're renting your house again?" "No, I'm buying my house." "Well, how'd you get out of Pottersfield?" When you look at where our systems are, Potter, who's this, even he got to say, "You're just a crabby old guy."
And
but
young
it's like
people can't afford to buy their house
young people
today.
not only they can't afford to buy a house, they're so stressed out, and they're really they're getting depressed. We have some of the highest rates of anxiety and depression, and AI might be even making it worse. So Potter owns AI, Potter owns X, Potter owns the media, Potter owns all of our houses. He's been deciding our policies. We got to do some George Bailey stuff building up. And there's some really wonderful stuff going on. So if you want to hear some good stuff.
Well, let's get to that, because
Okay.
we can start with January of this year through March, and the people of Minneapolis, the people of Minnesota really, because it wasn't just the people of Minneapolis, when these thugs, these Gestapo, these irresponsible agents descended and took some of our citizens, took some of our, what sticks out to me is a 67-year-old man in his underwear, after his door is bashed in, being led out to a truck and thrown in. And he was a citizen. He hadn't done anything. It was a bum steer, the wrong person, the wrong house, the wrong whatever. These people are not being held to account so far. But Minnesota stood up. I mean, if you turn on the television and you talk to any of the news people, they always talk Minnesota, because Minnesota was an example for the entire nation, perhaps the entire world, because people can stand up and people can be heard, and the people in Hungary showed it.
Right, the people in Hungary showed up.
And we have to do that here. It's I never thought that I would be at this point of my life worrying about our democracy, and I worry about it really, really.
And I think for those of us that have been around for a while too, we didn't think we would be here, but we are. And so, what is it that we do? And I do think. For me, I have this, and I have a simple lens. Am I supporting George Bailey or Potter? So there's some companies you can buy from that might make life seem convenient. But if you're supporting that ecosystem, you're supporting that ecosystem. How do we, in our small, everyday little actions, support a different ecosystem? And that's why I sell advertising for this little radio station, which is what I've been doing for 22 years. So on my food show, I'm really happy. I've got farmers markets, the farmers restaurant right next to the Guthrie in downtown Minneapolis.
Yeah.
They're now sponsoring the show. So people can go and eat there, and then they eat directly from the farmers. The food's all locally sourced. And so then we're building up and we're raising up another economy. And I see so
And a
many.
consciousness.
The consciousness. And that's a huge story. And I got to be careful when I come to that things, because I get a little
Emotional?
no, I get let me see if I can even try to express it, because I love consciousness stuff. I read a lot. I just love consciousness stuff. Whatever there's a divine spark in each one of us. Every one of us is valuable, and our dogs have that divine spark, and the trees have that divine spark. And if I see the divine spark in you, I lift the divine spark up in me. So how do we lift that up, and how do we how do we have an economic system that mirrors the innate divinity in all of life? And we have to, so instead of, you better be sustainable and do the, but the example of the mining and the boundary waters. I mean, that's, how do we lift up a better world?
We have to get people involved. People basically sit back, and I think maybe they're starting to realize the importance of being involved.
I think so.
Not just
yes.
the people of Minnesota, who obviously were marvelous during the ice capades.
But during the ice thing, the other thing that happened that was really intriguing is that people were connecting outside of media, right? So there was great signal groups. People were connecting outside of media, and that's what democracy is supposed to be. It's supposed to be us face to face. It's not just voting, once every 4 years and pressing a button, but it's about participating. And so that's and that participation and bringing that same participation to our economic systems
And we brought it in from all over the country. I mean, Bruce Springsteen
Yeah, I love that song.
wrote a song and
Yeah.
staged it here,
I went to the No Kings rally. It was so beautiful.
came in twice, and we've had wonderful rallies.
Yes.
We have fortunately, a good government in terms of the state officials. We have a chance now to elect Amy Klobuchar as our senator, which is really important. And I am a big supporter of Angie Craig, and I just hope that she is also our next senator. There will be another senator opening because Amy's spot has to be filled, and there was a resignation from Tina Smith. So, but we have to keep that develop it on a local level, and not let the crazies take over.
Well, and understand that it benefits the potters of the world, hopefully, if we're all mad at each other. And one of the things that Amy Klobuchar said at our recent Senate District convention that I really appreciated is that we have to open up to each other and not say, you're this, you're red, you're blue, not divide, but actually really honor that big tent, which means we have to listen to people who have different viewpoints.
And we have to work with them. And we have talked almost our whole show already. I mean, as I look up at the clock, and we have a minute left. Last thought.
Well, Laura at AM950, do check us out. We've got really good programs. And if you don't have an AM radio around, everything is also on your cell phone. You can listen online. You go to AM950. Check us out. Find the show that works for you, and find. Let's lift up hope for each other, because what we did in Minnesota is, and I know people refer to it as being a good neighbor, but I think this is core to our being. I mean, I really do. I think it's just how we're meant to live. We're meant to live as neighbors.
We saw in Minnesota that people who had never been involved, people who didn't know who their neighbors were out there protesting against really an autocratic system and a bunch of criminals.
And the only thing that can defeat fear and anger and all this negativity is love. Love thy neighbor.
And vote.
And vote. Democracy.
It's got to work.
Yeah, I hope.
Laura Hedlund.
Well, thank you, Ellen.
AM950, we thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure to join with you once again.
Yeah, well, thank you, and thank you for your involvement as well. And thank you guys for listening and caring.